Good morning. So for those of you who were thinking Janine and I are being rude texting, we forgot to print the order of service, so we'll be on our phones today. Welcome. We are Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist Congregation. Whether you are a member or a guest or somewhere in between, we are glad that you are here. For those of you in our beautiful building today, it is my honor to be standing in front of you. And for those of you at home, don't be shy. Please turn your cameras on for just a moment so that we can share in the joy that is your beautiful faces. Pop them up there, and everybody turn around and wave to the camera. Wave to our friends from afar. All right. Love you guys. Okay. So you guys, so many people are involved in our Sunday services. Our regular minister, Matthew Funkquery, is not here today, but we will have our wonderful guest, Janine Gelsinger. And we've got, yes, give it up. We've got our fantastic Chris Tackett at the piano, sitting next to our resident piano polar bear, Torben. We've also got our amazing AV crew. Let's see, we've got Chuck on camera. We've got Vince over there as our Zoom host, Lee, Ann, and Todd. I did not catch the names of hospitality. I apologize, but there's a whole crew back there. We've also got your greeters at the door, and there are people who work behind the scenes to create things that I probably have already forgotten about, so my apologies. So this month, we have been exploring truth. And today, we conclude our month with a service titled, Love is a Verb. So as I mentioned earlier, our guest, Janine Gelsinger, is here with us. She is from UU Jazz. The UU Jazz is our Unitarian Universalist Justice Arizona. It is a state action network, a nonprofit funded entirely by our donations, independent of the larger UUA. Their role is to support UUs and congregations across our entire state to take action for social change. Janine also serves as the Greater UU Movement the Greater UU Movement as a co-host for The View, not that view, the VUU, which is a weekly UU talk show and podcast, as a consultant to the UU Board of Trustees, as a curriculum writer for Beloved Conversations, the UU Anti-Racist Program. And she would love to chat with you during our coffee hour after the service. So that was a mouthful. As we begin our service today, we will light our chalice with words by the Reverend Julian Jamaica Soto. This is a piece titled, Blessed Are the Hungry. I know that you are hungry for justice, and sometimes when you fail, it feels like the times when you open the refrigerator door, look inside, and close it, nothing having met your appetite. But there is always trying again. There is the fact that one just act is the beginning, and together we can build another. The gnawing hunger for a different future is one that we feed in the present. Your diligence, your tenacity, your willingness to learn, not just know, but also do. Hunger shaping how you nourish, feeding one another with the long spoons of your compassion until you're strong enough to feed the part of the world that you can reach. Thank you, Summer. So our first hymn today is from our Singing in the Living Tradition hymnals, number 131, entitled Love Will Guide Us. I invite you to rise in body and spirit as you are able. We do not have Joel with us today, but don't worry, love will guide you through the song. As will the members of our choir who have hymnals, so if you get lost, look for one of them.
And I was going to say also, don't fear if you didn't pick a hymnal up on the way inside in the door. You're very welcome to always. They're in the shelf over there. But we always, always, always have our words on the screen, so join us in singing.
You knew exactly what to do. Okay, we're going to do something a little weird, so come with me on an adventure. For those of you who have been following along this month and for a little bit these last couple months sprinkled in, Reverend Matthew has been working with ChatGPT. Now, as an artist, I have very conflicting feelings about ChatGPT. However, I'm trying to follow his lead and learn more about it. So I spent an afternoon playing with ChatGPT and having a conversation about what it means to live love as an action and how that relates with our values. I gave it several different prompts. I asked it to write me a sonnet. I asked it to write me a prayer, a meditation. We had a conversation about it in general. I, for a minute, forgot it wasn't a human. It's kind of creepy. And then I asked it to write me a scene. I'm an actor. Give me a scene. So I asked it to give me a scene between two people discussing how love is an action in relation to our UU values. I had to get him to change it a few times. It wasn't quite right. And then towards the end, I asked him to give examples of how we could do that. And of course, these two ChatGPT created people were perfect. And that's not how life works. So I said, rewrite me the same scene, but give me some imperfect people. And so the following scene that you will hear, which I'm going to ask Neil and Monica to join me on. Yeah, get on up here. Come on. Guinea pigs, guinea pigs. I'm going to grab that mic from Chris. Now, the script is going to appear for you on the screens. Unfortunately, at home on Zoom, you will not be able to see the uncomfortableness of Monica and Neil as they work through this, but you will be able to hear it, and we wanted to get the words on the screen so you can see them. So now I'll read your setting for you, and you'll just have to share the mic. Can you do that? Or does one of you want to come here? You're good? You got it. Okay. So, our setting, a cozy coffee shop. Two friends, Sarah and Michael, sit across from each other, sipping their drinks.
You know, Michael, I've been reflecting on how the principles of Unitarian Universalism beautifully align with the concept of putting love into action. It's such a powerful connection, don't you think?
Absolutely, Sarah. The principles provide us with a guiding framework to embody love as an action and create a more just and compassionate world.
Next slide.
I couldn't agree more. Love in action resonates deeply with the principle of recognizing and affirming the inherent worth and dignity of every person. I try my best to practice this, but I must admit there are times when I catch myself making snap judgments. It's a constant effort to remind myself to see the worth and dignity in everyone.
I understand. Love in action, for me, also aligns with the principle of justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. While I strive to advocate for equality, there have been instances where I've fallen short. Times when I didn't speak up when I should have, or missed an opportunity to take meaningful action. It's a learning process, and I'm working on being more consistent.
That's so relatable. Another way I put love into action is by practicing active listening and empathy. However, there are moments when I find myself getting caught up in my own thoughts or distractions, and I don't give my full attention. It's a constant reminder to be present and truly listen.
I appreciate your honesty, Sarah. Love in action, for me, means being environmentally conscious. But I'll admit that I sometimes slip up and forget to follow sustainable practices. It's a journey of improvement, and I'm working on being more mindful of my impact on the planet.
We're all a work in progress, Michael. Love in action for me also means practicing forgiveness and fostering reconciliation. But there have been times when I struggled to let go of resentment or had difficulty mending broken relationships. It takes time, and it takes time and effort to navigate through the complexities of forgiveness.
I understand. That happens to me too. For me, love in action also extends to the simple acts of kindness we can offer every day.
Absolutely. However, I have my moments of selfishness or times when I'm caught up in my own concerns and overlook opportunities to help others. It's a reminder to be more attentive to the needs of those around me.
That really resonates with me too. Love in action also means advocating for the rights and well-being of marginalized communities. While I'm committed to this cause, I've made mistakes and lacked awareness on certain issues. It's important to educate ourselves, listen to the experiences of others, and continuously grow in our understanding.
Yes! And it means fostering a culture of inclusivity and celebrating diversity. I've had moments when I unintentionally said or did something that was insensitive or failed to fully embrace the richness of diversity. It's a reminder to reflect on my own biases and actively challenge them.
That's the beauty of growth, Sarah. Love in action, to me, also means practicing self-care and self-love. But I'll be honest, there are times when I neglect my own well-being and put others' needs before mine. It's a journey of finding balance and recognizing that taking care of myself is essential to show up with love for others.
I understand, Michael. We have to start within ourselves, and it's okay to have our moments of imperfection.
Exactly. By acknowledging our shortcomings and striving to do better, we can continue to grow and make a positive impact on the world.
They both smile, appreciating each other's vulnerability and the shared commitment to putting love into action despite their imperfections. Who knew we would also get couples counseling today? So the last thing that ChatGPT left me with after that scene is the quote that was just up on the board. It says, "Remember, imperfection is a part of being human, and the journey of putting love into action is a continuous one," which I thought was interesting, so I decided to share that with you because it gave me feedback as well as the actual scene. And we are going to talk a little bit more about how to just stop talking about love as an action when we hear from Janine.
Double checking here because I have the same phone thing they're working off of today as well. Come on up, choir. About a year and a half, not quite 2 years ago when I took over as music director here, it was the middle of the pandemic, and we were meeting on Wednesday evenings on Zoom, and I had a good 8 to 10 people who used to join me consistently on Zoom, and I thought that was really good for a church this size. And I thought when we get back to in-person work, I'll be lucky. With a church this size, 12 people would be good. And by the time we get into the spring, into the early summer, after Easter, and into coming up towards Memorial Day weekend, I'll be lucky to have 4 good people. Look at these people. Not only have we had way more than 4 this weekend, we've had as many as 24 through the rest of the year. And I have been nothing but heartened and encouraged and humbled by the love and support and the incredible just willingness to share their gifts of these people on the stage and everybody who has come and sung with us throughout the year. After today, we're going to take the rest of the summer off, so we won't be back until probably around Labor Day. Believe me, you'll hear about it when it starts to happen in the fall. And then we're dedicated even more so to getting as many people involved this fall. If you have any interest in singing at all, but you're worried about a ride, if you're worried about being out after dark, if you're worried about anything else, come and talk to me. We're trying to figure out how to set up rides for people. We're trying to figure out how to get more people involved. Please come and talk to me. I would love to have any and all of you. And once more, help me thank these wonderful people. I'm always conflicted about applause in church. That's one of my own weird little things, but I'm grateful for it and grateful for these people. We're singing a piece this morning that's based off of a melody from Mozart's clarinet concerto, which is also why the clarinet's here. Say hello, Alex. And it's words and musical arrangement by Jim Scott, who was just here a month or so ago. It's called Go Your Way in Peace. I appreciate this because this lovely Mozart melody makes a perfect bookend to how we started our fall season. I walked into the first choir rehearsal not knowing what I was going to get, so I had 3 pieces with me. One was a unison piece, one was a 2-part piece, and one was the Mozart Ave Verum Corpus, 4-part. Not super difficult choir, but 4 real independent choral parts. They picked up the Mozart and nailed it. So it's my great pleasure to end the season as well with a little bit of Mozart by way of Jim Scott.
Good morning, everyone. We enter into this time of meditation with this blessing. Take a few seconds to get as comfortable as possible in whatever position allows you to feel centered. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable. Open them if not. Take a deep breath, and we enter a blessing for risk takers and failures by Robin Tanner. Today we share in the blessing for losers, risk takers, all failures far and wide. Blessed are they who fall in the mud, who jump with gusto and rip the pants, who skin the elbows and bruise the ego. for they shall know the sweetness of risk. Blessed are they who make giant mistakes, whose intentions are good, but impact has injured, who know the hot sense of regret and ask for mercy, for their hearts will know the gift of forgiveness. Blessed are they who have seen a D or an F or C or any letter less than perfect, who are painfully familiar with the red pen and the labels as less than, for they know the wisdom in the imperfect. Blessed are they who try again, who dust off, who wash up, who extend the wish for peace, who return to sites of failure, who are dogged in their pursuit, for they will discover the secrets to dreams. Blessed are they who refuse to listen to the naysayers, for their hearts will be houses for hope. Blessed are they who see beyond the surface of another, for they will be able to delight in the gift of compassion. Blessed are they who stop running the race to help a fellow traveler, who pick up the fallen, who stop for injured life, for they shall know the kindness of strangers. Blessed are they who wildly, boldly abandon winning, for they shall know the path of justice. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe, and I am minister at the UU Church of Tucson, and I also serve on the UU Jazz Board.
Hi, I'm Dr. Stuart Roden, UU in Scottsdale, Arizona, author, professor, and I too serve on the UU Jazz Board.
I'm Ren Manning, a UU in Tucson, Arizona, co-director of Borderlings, facilitating education for migrant justice, and I serve on the UU Jazz Board.
Hi, I'm the Reverend Anthony Umtuaswat Johnson, minister at the Sedona Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, and I too serve on the UU Jazz Board.
Len Perez could not be here tonight, but she is a member of the UU Congregation of Phoenix and also serves on the board with us. As the board, we recently created the following value statements to inform and guide our work at the Unitarian Universalist Justice Arizona Network.
Learning. We learn by reflecting in community and taking action, as well as individual curiosity, effort, and dedication. The work of UU Jazz is at the growing edges, the gap between where we are as UUs and where we want to be.
Courage. We strive to move beyond our comfort zones. We understand that safety isn't always possible or guaranteed, so we work from a place of bravery and encourage risk-taking.
Accountability. We strive to build more restorative and transformative practices as part of our justice work. We are intentional in our engagement with punitive cultures when necessary. We take responsibility for the harm we may have currently and historically caused, and strive to build a culture where relationships can be restored and empathy can grow. We balance the transparency and confidentiality that is often required during these processes.
Relationship. We organize on teams with partners and in coalitions because we know that we are better together. And our well-being is intertwined. We nurture our relationships of mutual trust through clear communication and by doing what we promise. Doing what we promise. We value the emergent needs of people over adhering to established processes.
Discernment. We approach our work thoughtfully to ensure alignment with our mission and vision. When our values conflict with one another, we lean into complexity and don't expect a one-size-fits-all solution to every decision.
Equity. We use a frame of equity instead of equality because what works for one person doesn't work for all. Seek to subvert dominant cultural norms by centering the margins and normalizing the radical. We follow the lead of directly impacted persons and organizations who are focused on taking direct action for policy and societal change. We anticipate and accommodate the needs, holding space for those who may join us.
Self-awareness. We believe that everyone has a role to play in the ecosystem of justice work. There are times when some or all of us may need to listen, move back, and decenter our own experiences and priorities. We take power dynamics into consideration when deciding when to lead and when to follow.
Imagination. We approach our work with an attitude of curiosity and creativity. Radical change requires us to reimagine the way things can change from the root, rather than replicating systems of oppression or maintaining the status quo.
Joy. We reject the idea that justice work is only hard or tedious. It is also the path to meaning and joy in life. We approach our work and our play with a little bit of silliness, enjoy the process of doing justice, and remember to celebrate milestones, progresses, and every effort along the way.
Sustainability. We prioritize sustainable work by allowing ourselves time and space to be human, to handle personal matters, care for family, take sick leave, and just plain rest. We support an attitude of work that includes us as whole people and believe that cycles of work and rest make long-term sustainability possible. To support this, we close in July and December to prioritize intentional rest and push back against capitalism's lie that we are only worth what we produce.
Thank you to our beautiful Board of Trustees for illuminating their new value statements. I want to apologize. There was a captioned version of that video, and it doesn't seem to be the one they sent us, so it might have been a little easier to understand if it was captioned, closed caption, so I apologize for that. I'm so glad to be with you all this weekend, and I brought you a story, and it's a story of a spiritual pilgrimage. Not that kind. A few years ago, I learned from Reverend Anthony, who's on our board and just spoke, that UUs can have spiritual pilgrimages too. And so I took a trip this spring to Memphis, Tennessee, and I spent a few days at the Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Motel. Has anyone been there? All right, yeah, several of you. So I got to experience it for the first time this spring, and the story of the civil rights movement wasn't new to me, but it was definitely an opportunity to dive in a little bit deeper. And as I walked around the site of MLK's assassination and learned more about the civil rights movement, I looked for pieces I could bring home and share with you all about how some of the movement lessons from the civil rights era inform our justice work today and the work that we're all doing now. So I learned a few things. First, one of the things I really appreciated about the way that this museum is set up is the focus was not only on Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, he was clearly a wonderful piece of civil rights history. But sometimes the way we tell the story about the civil rights movement is kind of a messianic narrative or a savior narrative where MLK just came down from nowhere and just fixed racism. and now it's gone. And that is not true. I know that you all have been talking about truth all this month, right? And so let's tell the truth about the civil rights movement. It wasn't MLK waving a magic wand, right? He was a powerful speaker, a wonderful leader. But the civil rights movement was made up of people power. The civil rights movement involved Ella Baker and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Commission, right? It involved sit-ins, freedom rides, the Mississippi Freedom Summer, small local actions all across the South that made up a big movement. It was people getting involved in their own communities. We also tell a story about Rosa Parks. You know, we have that t-shirt that says Rosa Parks, nah, right? That she was just real tired that day and decided she was just gonna sit down and didn't feel like giving up her seat. But that's not what happened. That does a lot of disservice to the incredible Rosa Parks. She went and trained at the Highlander Center. It was a coordinated action, one that was planned, part of movement, because she knew that getting arrested could challenge the desegregation laws. They would have a case that they could use to fight. And in fact, they know that because Claudette Colvin, a lesser-known civil rights hero, had tried the same thing on a bus as part of the same coordination months before, but because she was arrested for assault instead of for violating segregation laws, they couldn't use her case to fight the desegregation. I also saw UUs celebrated at the Museum for Civil Rights, like our own Viola Liuzzo. Do you all know UU patron saint Viola Liuzzo? She was a white woman who lived in Detroit, who was so inspired by what was happening in Selma that she traveled all the way down, and she did what a lot of us do at big actions. She drove a shuttle. She drove her car back and forth from the bridge to the church, bringing people water and food, making sure people had rides. She showed up in the way a lot of us do, and she was martyred for that cause. And so what does it have to do with us today? Well, I think sometimes as UUs, we have a tendency to look towards someone else to save us from this, right? Maybe it's Reverend Dr. Susan Frederick Gray, our UA president. You know, she's out there in the street fighting fascists, right? Maybe it's your minister. Maybe sometimes it's me, right? Showing up around the state as a UU, fighting the good fight. And sometimes we put on our yellow side with love shirts like a team jersey. Okay, now I'm not a sports person, but I'm gonna try to make a sports analogy. We put on our yellow t-shirts because then we can say, you know what, we're part of that team, and everything going on the field, that's me too. I get to celebrate those wins. We've got to do a little more than put on the jersey, because justice is not a sideline sport, right? So we all contribute in the ways we can. Some of us, that means being on the front lines, but not everyone has to be chained to a pipeline like I did a few summers ago in Minnesota. Some of you donate to fund the movement, right? Some of you are like Viola, driving your car back and forth, dropping off water bottles to protesters in the heat. So understanding that there's not one person that's going to save us from what's going on in the world today is one piece that I really took away from that journey. The second part was that I looked for a thread as I wandered through the exhibits to follow, and one of the threads I followed was anytime I saw mention of a politician. So I paid attention. Okay, who are the politicians we're mentioning here? Well, here's the whole thing about JFK. And you know, JFK repeatedly called Dr. Martin Luther King and said, you know, Martin, it's just not time for this yet. You know, I support you, but you know, you're asking for too much. And the way you're asking, I mean, can you just tone it down? He had to be pushed. Even LBJ, right? A lot of legislation got signed when he was in office that had been pushed for a long time. But did he just pick up a pen and write some magic policy? No. It was the people that pushed the politicians in office in order to do the right thing, the thing that fits our values. even if you go as far back as Abraham Lincoln, when he wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, right, we call him the great emancipator. But the Emancipation Proclamation was a war move. It was political, because if he freed the slaves, that meant he could weaken the South enough to win the war. All throughout history, politicians have never been the one to make the change happen. It's always been the people. It's always been the people. Frederick Douglass says, power concedes nothing without demand. And that's how we know that we are the ones that make this happen. And I think about today, and especially in a city like Tucson, where we look around and say, all right, our politicians sometimes align with our values a little bit, right? But are they really going to pass every policy that aligns with our values without a nudge? I don't think so. That's why it's up to people power. It's always been up to people power, because we elect targets, not saviors. The third thread I looked for as I made my spiritual pilgrimage to the museum was I looked for any mention of churches. And I found a lot, right? In the South, during the Civil Rights Movement, churches were organizing centers. They were organizing hubs. Everything happened in the church. In fact, I met a UU while I was there. His name is John. He's 82 years old, and he told me that he was ordained a long time ago, but he only served as a minister for 9 months. He said he got ordained in the 60s because he felt that white churches should be just involved in the civil rights movement as black churches were. So he went to seminary, he got ordained, and he was fired 9 months in because he desegregated a football field going on the church field. Later, John moved to Virginia. He became the State Board of Education. He worked at the State Board of Education, and he desegregated schools in the state of Virginia. He now leads our UU State Action Network, just like ours, in that state. We know there's a big role of the church in civil rights movement, and there's a role of the church today. But while I was at the Civil Rights Museum, I thought a lot about the concept of risk and safety. In our UU Jazz team, we've been talking a lot about that, about engaging UUs and really analyzing our concept of safety and risk. And we talk a lot about the concept of community safety, and I'm going to define that for you. What community safety means is that thinking about the collective safety of our community is different than thinking about our individual safety and risk levels. And it means acknowledging that some of us move through the world with more safety than others, and some of us move through the world with more risk than others because of pieces of our identity, right? Black folks, indigenous folks, people of color, queer folks, trans folks, people with disabilities, seniors, older folks. We move through the world with a different level of risk. And so what community safety means is those that have a little bit more safety agree to take on a little bit more risk so that those who carry more risk can have a little bit more safety. And together we even all of that out. MLK had a lot to say about the role of churches. And one of the quotes that stuck with me, which some of you will probably recognize, he said in 1967, MLK was getting tired, right? He was a little frustrated. In 1965, they had passed the Civil Rights Act, and he was feeling a little discouraged because a lot of the energy that went into the movement petered out a bit after that. The Civil Rights Act was passed, right? And he said, the church must be reminded that it's not the master or the servant of the state, but rather the conscience of the state, and never its tool. If the church does not recapture its prophetic zeal, it will become an irrelevant social club without moral or spiritual authority. Oof. That's a word from Reverend Dr. MLK. But I didn't come here for a social club. You all didn't come here for a social club. I know you didn't. We're not a tool of any political party. We have our own values that we stay true to, and those values spur us to action. Because we know together we push the people in power to make a world that's closer to our values. Now, I'll say sometimes as a community organizer, sometimes I get a little frustrated, yeah? We all do. And we've been talking a lot in the readings during service about imperfection, about failure. And I felt that too. Sometimes at UU Jazz, we struggle to get participation in some of the things we're doing. Last month, we almost didn't make payroll. We struggle too. Sometimes I wonder if my call to ministry as someone who organizes people for social change is something I can still use to put a roof over my kid's head. But here's what I know. There's a litmus test to use to decide whether it's worth it. And what I ask myself is the work we're doing making a difference? Can we look at the work we're doing in the world as UUs, and can we see that it made a change in someone else's life? How is the action I'm taking changing someone's life for the better, changing policies that affect lots of people? And so here's what I know. Here's what keeps me hopeful. Yesterday at this congregation, 45 people showed up to talk about how you can expand your welcome to be radically welcoming. And you were open and vulnerable, and you wanted to do the work to make sure that your community was even more welcoming to everyone. That's how I know love is a verb, because I saw you do it yesterday. You know how else I know that love is a verb? Because we held beloved conversations here in this congregation, and so many of you signed up. And even during the pandemic, you engaged every week in anti-racism learning to break down your own internal systems and understand how you could show up in the world in a way that broke down systems of oppression. That's how I know love is a verb. You then expanded that beloved conversations work here. You put together an among team, and you said, now that we've done the work on ourselves, we're gonna look at the systems of this congregation, and we're gonna make sure that oppression doesn't permeate in our own systems, because we can make change here too. That's how I know love is a verb. And you know how else I know love is a verb? Because during the pandemic, while you were in interim time, while you were trying to put together a new building, you still took the time to participate in trans inclusion and congregations course. And several of you met with me for 6 weeks and worked through what it looks like to expand your welcome to make sure that trans and non-binary folks are a vital part of this community. Love is a verb. Love is a verb. I see it every day in all of those actions. You know how else, when you all moved into this building, one of the first things you did was find out who your neighbors were. And you put together partnerships with schools nearby and said, how can we help? We are called to be a good neighbor here. How can we help these schools? And put together programs for outreach. You're doing it. You're showing that love is a verb, right? You know how else I know? In March, almost 60 of you from all across the state came to Tucson, and you said, the Supreme Court can do what they like with Roe v. Wade. We know we're gonna get people the information they need to keep themselves safe and make good reproductive choices. And so 60 of you got trained as OWL educators, and now OWL is offered all across our state in congregations who've never done it before to make sure that people have sex education. Because if the schools won't do it, if the state legislature wants to ban it, if the school districts take it away, then we will do it ourselves in this church to make sure that the neighborhood has what they need, that kids have what they need, adults have what they need to keep ourselves safe, to understand the ways that our bodies function. You're doing it. You know how else I know that love is a verb? Last year, in 2022, with the UU the Vote program, this congregation did some hard work. You engaged in citizens' petitions to save democracy. And that was a very difficult loss for a lot of you that worked hard gathering signatures when that got thrown off the ballot. Many of you carried clipboards for Save Our Schools to make sure that we had the education funding we needed. You even set up outside the church so many Sundays in a row so that people could come and sign the petition. And when that got thrown off the ballot, that was a hard loss too. But here's what I do know. So many of you did something that you had never done before. You took the step to take action beyond just voting. You took that action to collect the signatures. Even though it's weird to stand around and ask people for signatures and it can feel uncomfortable, you pushed through that discomfort and you did it anyway. And the one citizens initiative that did make it through, Healthcare Rising, our partners at UU Jazz, UU's all across the state phone banked and knocked on doors. And that citizens initiative, not something a legislator wrote, someone in government, but the people wrote, it passed with a 72% vote in Arizona, the highest margin of any statewide piece on the ballot. And it was a people's initiative that now means that people can't be harassed for their medical debt and can't lose all of their funding because of it. I know every time I log onto RTS and I see your names using the request to speak system at the state legislature, weighing in on bills, Love is a Verb, you're taking that action every week during the legislative session. And I know Love is a Verb because I sit on the LGBTQ Legislative Coalition as UU Jazz. We're the only faith-based organization included. And for the past 5 years in a row, as states all across the country are passing horrible anti-trans bills, we have beat them all back. None of them have passed here in Arizona in an environment that never should have happened, but we did that because we worked in coalition with 22 other organizations. We were strong, we went to the Capitol every single day, and we made sure that our trans kids in Arizona are protected. And this year we get to enjoy as we get the veto stamp on every single one of those bills. Yeah. I know Love is a Verb because I've seen you show up at school board meetings when they are trying to ban books that tell the truth about history, when they are trying to ban books that include LGBTQ kids in the narrative. I've seen you at those school board meetings. I've been at those school board meetings in Washington School District when that board canceled a contract with a Christian university that espoused values that said LGBTQ people are bound for hell, and that school district ripped up that contract and canceled it with the support of our religious folks saying those aren't our values, and it is not okay for kids to experience that in school. I saw you all show up and do that, and I know that you know what it means to live love in action, to have love as a verb. And this Saturday, 25 of you already are signed up for a de-escalation training in Phoenix because our partners at Drag Story Hour asked us, can you come help us? We're getting threatened outside of our story hours across the state when we're supporting kids and understanding that there are characters in books for them, that drag queens are performers for children too, and they are getting threats and canceling our events, but our UUs said no. And several congregations in the state offered to host them in their congregations to afford the protections that we have here in this building and extend them into the community. And we're training to be outside in the doors to know exactly what to do to make sure that we carry some risks so that our trans friends and our drag performer friends and our LGBTQ friends can have more safety. And that's how I know that you show up. I'm so grateful to all of you for the actions that you're taking. You keep me going and doing this work when it is hard. I know that risk is necessary in these times with everything happening in the world, because as I walked around the Civil Rights Museum, it didn't look that different than today. But that means we are on a precipice. That means our action matters now more than ever. We are right at the edge of making change. I hope you'll join me. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to invite you one more time to rise in body and spirit as you are willing and able as we sing number 118 in our Singing the Living Traditions, This Little Light of Mine. And guys, I want you to move. I want you to celebrate what we have done, what we are doing, and what we have yet to do.
Thank you for joining us today. Please join us afterwards for some refreshments and chat with our speaker today, Janine Gelsinger. As you exit the doors, the wooden baskets are for the work of MVUU, and the woven basket this month goes towards Children's Action Alliance. So today's our last Sunday for donations to Children's Action Alliance. They're an independent voice that identifies and eliminates barriers to the well-being of children and families. They work to create an Arizona where every child is safe, loved, and has access to quality education and affordable health care. They advocate for meaningful legislation and smart policies that improve the lives of Arizona families and children. A reminder that we have our congregational meeting next Sunday, set to meet after service. If anyone wants to talk about the budget, I believe Sally Wistrand, can you raise your hand? Right over there, offered to meet with people for a few minutes after service if anyone has any questions. Many hands go into running a service, and so today's spotlight is on hospitality. Who are usually here early, setting up, getting food and drinks ready, kind of keeping it going afterwards and helping clean up. A couple ways we can help them. One is by making sure that we can put our plates and cups in the bins that say dirty or used. That's where they go, not in the clean. And also, not saying anyone's doing that, but just in case, they are looking also for volunteers to help out. And so if anyone's interested, Joel's not here today, but I believe Jess, Karen, and Melody are here. So if you want to snag them and ask them how to go about helping volunteer, they would be more than willing to let you know. Thank you. And today's closing is Do Not Fear Agitation by Tanya Marquez. Do not fear agitation, for agitation is a rhythm of life itself, to be put into motion, to be stirred. Do not fear the movements that decenter what you always thought permanent. You carry within the center of your understanding the compass to show you the way. Carry with you the love that will hold you, the vision that will guide you, the relationships to all beings and the world that will ground you. Go in peace and in gentle agitation to stir this world to the side of love. Blessed be.
Almost 94 years ago, an incredible woman was born. Born Ella Mae Bullock, she got to be known as Tina Turner. She came to celebrity and stardom married to Ike Turner. But for a lot of reasons that I'm sure some of you know, that didn't work. And she walked away from that. I love this detail. She walked away from that marriage and she said, all I want, I don't want money. I don't even want the songs. I don't want anything else. I just want my name. So she walked away not knowing what she was going to get. And for a short time, she played on what could charitably be called the nostalgia circuit. As in, Tina Turner, formerly of Ike and Tina. But then she found some new material, some new songs, the one I played earlier, What's Love Got to Do With It, which also became the title of an amazing biographical film that she worked on with Angela Bassett playing Tina Turner. If you don't know that film, go home and look it up. It's a beautiful, beautiful film. She walked away and she created a new life for herself. And she did manage to incorporate a couple of old songs. But I can't leave you today without at least one of them. So, on your feet, shake a tail feather, and please, in honor of Tina, just a little snap or a clap on 2 and 4. Not 1 and 3, 2 and 4. We're not going to go too fast. It's going to be more of a groove than a rock, but give it a grind.